The day he refused to quit. What if the only thing standing between you and your dream is the decision you make 5 seconds before you give up? This is the story of a young man named Daniel. And, believe me, the ending is not what you expect. Daniel had one dream. He wanted to become a professional runner. Not the fastest runner, not the strongest. Just a runner good enough to prove that his life could become something more. But there was one problem. Daniel kept losing. Again and again and again. Every race ended the same way. Other runners crossed the finish line. Daniel watched them from behind. Until one evening, after another painful defeat, his coach looked at him and said, "Maybe running isn't your gift." Those words broke something inside him. That night, Daniel went home, threw his running shoes into a corner, and decided he was finished. No more training. No more races. No more embarrassment. But the next morning, something strange happened. At 5 a.m., Daniel woke up automatically. He looked at his shoes. For almost 10 minutes, he just stared at them. Then he whispered, "One more day." He put them on and went outside. He didn't know it yet, but that tiny decision was about to change his life. For the next several months, Daniel trained harder than ever, but nothing seemed to change. His times improved by seconds, then stopped. He trained through cold mornings. He trained through rain. He trained when nobody was watching. And still, he lost. Then came the race that nearly destroyed him. It was the biggest race of his life. If he performed well, he could qualify for the next level. The gun fired. Daniel ran. For the first half of the race, everything was perfect. Then, with only a short distance left, his legs suddenly cramped. He fell. The other runners passed him. One after another. Daniel tried to stand. He couldn't. The crowd was getting louder, but not for him. He looked toward the finish line. It was right there, so close. Yet it suddenly felt 1,000,000 miles away. And then Daniel heard a voice from the crowd. His coach. He wasn't shouting, "Run faster!" He shouted something completely different. "Daniel, don't win the race! Finish it!" Daniel looked at the finish line again. He stood up. His leg was hurting. His body was exhausted. And he was already guaranteed to lose. But he started walking, then jogging, then running, slowly, painfully, one step at a time. The crowd that had been cheering for the winners became silent. Everyone was watching Daniel, because at that moment, something had changed. He wasn't racing the other runners anymore. He was racing the version of himself that wanted to quit. And finally, he crossed the finish line, dead last. Everyone else had already finished. Daniel had lost the race, but his coach walked toward him with tears in his eyes. Daniel looked at him and said, "I lost." His coach smiled. "No, Daniel, today you won the race that mattered." Daniel didn't understand. Not yet. Months later, something unexpected happened. The same Daniel who had spent years finishing at the back started winning smaller races, then bigger ones, and eventually he qualified for the competition he had once believed was impossible. But here's the part people often miss. Daniel didn't become successful because he suddenly became the fastest. He became successful because he learned something most people discover too late. You don't have to be better than everyone today. You just have to refuse to become worse by quitting. Think about your own life. Maybe you're building a business. Maybe you're trying to learn a skill. Maybe you've failed more times than you can remember. Maybe nobody believes in you anymore. And maybe you're only one bad day away from quitting. If that's you, remember Daniel, because sometimes the difference between a failure and a future success is not talent. It's not money. It's not luck. It's one simple decision. I will try one more time. You don't need to run the whole race today. You don't need to see the entire road. Just take the next step. Then another. And another. Because one day you may look back and realize the moment you almost gave up was actually the moment your story began to change. So if life is telling you to quit, listen carefully. Maybe it's not the end. Maybe you're closer than you think. Never give up.